It all begins in a dark continent where the Ashudo, Demon King, and his army battles against an army of humans. When the battle ends in a stalemate, a party of heroes assembles and storms the castle to face him. After a fierce battle, the Ashudo gets hit with a spell, which makes his body crumble, and while he wonders if he's really going to die, his body disintegrates and he blacks out. Somewhere else, a kingdom named Lehar was attacked by a first-class earth dragon and terrifies some adventurers enough to make them hide. Suddenly, Aerys, a white knight, shows up and announces that no one will die on her watch, and on seeing that the dragon's body is covered in scales, Aerys figures its weakness must be in its scaleless abdomen. So she jumps to cut open the dragon, but the dragon blasts her with its dragon's breath. Although she tried to regain her balance, but unfortunately, Aerys crashed into the ground and realized saving the day doesn't come with hazard pay. When the dragon roars angrily, Aerys figures it's time to join her ancestors and decides to do it in a grand style. However, a huge bolt of lightning strikes the castle and almost blinds everyone present. Surprised she's still alive, Aerys wonders where the light came from and suddenly spots some cloaked dude standing before the dragon. She then wonders who he is, while Ashudo, the former demon lord, also wonders where he is. He then freaks out on discovering he's got a human body and gets pissed at how fragile and squishy it feels. Since he's used to ruling the dark continent, Ashudo spots the moon in the sky and wonders why there's only one. Just when it occurs to him that he must be in another world, he turns around and spots the dragon closing in on him and figures he just RSVP'd to his own disaster. While Aerys watches, surprised, the dragon cremates Ashudo on the spot, disappointing Aerys, who then remembers her promise to keep everyone alive. While she blames herself for her failure, she hears Ashudo commenting on how his human body strangely withstood the attack. Suddenly, the dragon attacks again with a magical eye spell, and on seeing this, Aerys freaks out, saying it's the Eye of Petrification. Since it's usually a fatal attack, Ashudo worries about it, but the attack doesn't work on him. After this, Aerys wonders how Ashudo broke out of the petrification magic on his own, while Ashudo figures he must have retained some of his Demon King powers. So, Ashudo prepares to retaliate while Aerys marvels at his abilities. Just then, Ashudo decides to make the dragon regret picking a fight with him, and suddenly hits the monster with a deadly uppercut. Aerys then watches the dragon get the thrashing of a lifetime, and other adventurers also freak out, wondering if they're in a bad VR demo. When Ashudo was done, Aerys approached him and asked who he was. However, Ashudo stares at her like she's speaking in Morse code, so he turns to the dragon's body and casts a spell that enables him to extract the knowledge from the dragon. Just then, he turns to Aerys, who then asks him about what he just did, and since he could understand her now, Ashudo smiles while Gelda, the squad witch, sneaks up on him and asks what he is. After they bombard him with more questions, Gelda guesses that he must have used the corpse of the dragon to get information. At this point, Ashudo responds by saying he did it because he couldn't understand what Aerys was saying. Surprised, Aerys asks why he has such powers, but Ashudo tells her to stop asking too many questions. On hearing this, Aerys bows to thank Ashudo for saving everyone. However, Ashudo looks away and says that he was just trying to protect himself. Since her damaged breastplate exposes her jiggle jewels, Ashudo shuts his eyes. After this, Aerys asks Ashudo if he really defeated the dragon without any weapons, and when he confirms this, she freaks out, saying it's impossible. Just then, Lance, another adventurer, shows up battered and tells Ashudo to stop telling lies. When she insists that it's impossible to beat the dragon with his bare hands, Lance tells Aerys that although Ashudo saved their lives, there are many things untrustworthy about him. Just then, Aerys says she has a point and asks Ashudo for his name, so when he introduces himself, Aerys comments that he's got a weird name. Ashudo then reveals that he probably died and restarted his life as a young boy. While the ladies stare at him with disbelieving expressions, Ashudo says he doesn't care if they believe him or not. Suddenly, Ladessa, another adventurer, awakens from being unconscious and asks about what happened when she was logged out. Afterwards, Ashudo tells the ladies to introduce themselves. So, Aerys goes first, and when she introduces herself, Lance suddenly gets in Ashudo's face and makes him realize that Aerys is a white knight famous for being brave in the country. Afterwards, Lance introduces herself while Ladessa introduces herself as a hunter and her furry partner named Krull. While Lance throws a tantrum, Ladessa tells Ashudo that their group is called the Silver Wolf Knights and asks him to guess who its leader is. In response, Ashudo says it's either Aerys or the Holy Beast since the name of the group is named after a wolf. Impressed, Ladessa hugs Ashudo and says that they could be friends, but he freaks out. Suddenly, Ladessa mistakenly rips Ashudo's cloak off him, exposing his miniature candy stick, so the ladies cover their faces and freak out. Afterwards, Ladessa suggests they head back to the royal capital, while Gelda introduces herself and adds that she's going to get to know more about Ashudo later. When they arrive at the Adventurers Guild, Ashudo almost loses his mind since he was once done in by adventurers. So he asks the ladies why they brought him there, and Aerys says that the guild will know what to do with him. At this point, Ashudo asks Aerys if she's an adventurer, and when she confirms this, Ashudo asks why they're called the Silver Wolf Knights. In response, Aerys explains that it's just a name to make them sound cooler. Shortly after, they enter an office where Lemme, the guild director, introduces herself, and since her cannonballs were barely covered, Ashudo shuts his eyes to prevent sudden nosebleeds. Afterwards, Lemme thanks Ashudo for saving the special campaign squad, but he says he doesn't deserve any thanks, since he only reacted to the attacking monster. Lemme then suggests that Ashudo explain his situation while promising not to hurt him, but Ashudo gets fascinated by some scales on her table and asks about them. So Lemme explains that it's a lie detector, and to show him how it works, Lemme says she loves her job since it's the best job ever. Suddenly, the scales begin to rattle, shocking Ashudo, who then points out that he understands what that means. After this, he introduces himself and reveals that he was a demon lord with an ambition to control the entire world. While he narrates how he got defeated, the scales remain still, so he further explains that although his memories were erased, he has a feeling he respawned after the adventurers unalived him. Hearing this, the lady's eyes widen with surprise, so Lemme points out that the scales didn't move and reveals that Ashudo must be telling the truth. When Ashudo confirms that he is, Lemme suddenly consoles him with her plushies and says he must have been through a lot to convince himself that he's a demon lord to keep his sanity. Afterwards, she explains that the scales only sense lies if he actually believes what he's saying to be true. When she adds that demon lords only exist in bedtime stories, Ashudo gets angry. To make matters worse, Lemme asks Ashudo if he knows that he's screwed, surprising Ashudo, who then asks why she thinks so and reminds her that getting to live a second life is like winning the lottery. However, Lemme gets off her chair and states that he is broke and jobless, annoying Ashudo, who then warns her to watch her mouth. But Lemme reiterates that he would need to become an adventurer to live in the town. While Ashudo freaks out about this, Lemme states that he'd need a guardian with social standing to get the job. Ashudo then says that he just got reincarnated and asks how he's supposed to get a guardian. Luckily for him, Aerys offers to be his guardian, surprising the other ladies. However, Lance dissuades her from this, but Aerys thanks her for her concerns and states that she has already made up her mind. Suddenly, Lemme gets excited and thanks Aerys for her generosity, while Aerys tells Ashudo that he can become a good adventurer, but Ashudo says he hasn't decided yet. After this, Aerys says he's got nothing to worry about and adds that she's interested in his strength. When she says she'd like to learn to fight like he does, Lance suddenly reminds her that they've got somewhere to be. The next day, at a training for noob adventurers, the instructor welcomes the newbies and announces that they'll be starting off with stone-throwing training, while Ashudo feels like he's back in school. So he stands by and watches the other throw stones at scarecrows, while the instructor boosts their confidence while running to save his head. Just when the instructor lectures them on the importance of throwing rocks, Ashudo picks up a little stone and stares at his scarecrow target. Suddenly, he hurls the stone at it, and an explosion rocks the training grounds, surprising Ashudo himself and the others. Seeing this, the instructor freaks out, saying it's the ultimate form of magic called the Meteorite of Armageddon. Seeing the crater left behind by Ashudo's explosive stone throw, the other wonder who threw the stone. Suddenly, a bulge rises from the crater, and red worms suddenly break out of the ground, making the instructor freak out. While they all flee, wondering if the worms caused the explosion. Ashudo checks out the worms and figures he had seen them on posters at the guild. However, he says they're bugs and nothing compared to dragons, so Ashudo dares the worms to get violent and hurls a stone at them. When the stone lands, the worms get blown up in massive explosions. Amazed by this, the instructor and other students wonder who Ashudo is and if he threw the first stone. When he was done with the worms, Ashudo turned around to leave, but a king worm broke out of the ground, making the instructor and other students trepidate. Unfazed, Ashudo welcomes the king worm while stating that they both hold titles and suggests they fight with all their heart till death. Immediately, Ashudo charges towards the king worm, and he decides to refer to his archive and discovers that the monster's outer shell is as hard as diamond. Just then, he decides to attack from the inside and jumps into the mouth of the beast. Seeing this, the instructor freaks out and says they have to help Ashudo, but when the king worm turns its attention to him, the instructor flees with the other students. Suddenly, the king worm gets ripped from the inside, and Ashudo's arm bursts out of its body. When he tears his way out of the worm, Ashudo says his attack was perfect, while the instructor and other students watch in awe. Ashudo then laughs while saying he didn't expect the king of worms to be that weak. He then takes to the sky and decides to start all over again in the new world and make it his. A few moments later, when Ashudo lands, the instructor grabs him and comments on how splendidly he fought. After asking Ashudo for his name, the instructor calls the attention of the other students and states that Ashudo hasn't earned the right to be an adventurer, but defeated the king of worms. Suddenly, the students applaud Ashudo and toss him in the air, while Ashudo tells them to stop being annoying. Meanwhile, the school headmaster watches from his window and states that he can't believe Ashudo just became a student that day. On checking his bio, the headmaster figures Aerys is his guardian, but also discovers something strange about his recorded level and status. Ignoring this, the headmaster stamps his form, hoping they'll measure his status again when he graduates. With the stamp, Ashudo gets awarded the title of Apprentice Knight Level 0, and he graduated on his first day at school. Later in the royal capital, news spread about the promising rookie who graduated on his first day at school for defeating the king worm. Meanwhile, in a bar somewhere, Lemme points out that Ashudo is trending on the news, but Aerys tells her not to slack off so much, even though she's a regular at the bar. In response, Lemme says it's alright since there are no customers apart from them. When Aerys won't give up, Gelda tells her to quit since Lemme has the morals of a popcorn at a movie theater. When she adds that Lemme is immorality and shamelessness with some cloth on, Lemme hears this, and she tells Gelda that while her words are as bitter as ever, it's the best compliment she's ever heard. Afterwards, Lemme reaches into her treasure chest and announces that she's got a surprise that'll make Aerys' eyes pop out of their sockets. She then drops a sheet containing Ashudo's status data, and on checking it out, Aerys says she hasn't seen or heard anything like it. Lemme then recalls her surprise when Ashudo informed her that he graduated, and reminds Aerys that she once held the title for the shortest graduation in history. When Lemme says there is nothing compared to Ashudo's, Aerys says that she can't believe it and wonders if the analyst magicians made a mistake. In response, Lemme says she thought the same thing too at first, but she confirmed it with the analyst magicians. Based on the stats, Ashudo's level was 0, so Lemme says it's certain that Ashudo has arrived at the limit of his potential. Curious, Aerys asks what Ashudo's real level must be, and Lemme says she can't imagine it. Just then, Aerys figures the uproar in the halls must have been because of Ashudo. Some moments before the bar, she had gone out for a meeting and overheard some adventurers talking about a rookie who single-handedly defeated the worms. Afterwards, Aerys figures Ashudo must be hiding a power no one can ever imagine. On checking his skills section, she wonders why he's got too many skills. Just then, Gelda points out that his alignment stats look abnormal, and Lemme chips in that he's more on the chaos side. Seeing that he's got an order and chaos alignment of 100, Aerys freaks out. Lemme then chips in that the most atrocious people she's seen never have a chaos level over 75. In addition, Lemme states that the cruelest tyrants in history didn't get higher than 80, and adds that alignment doesn't determine whether one becomes evil or good. Some moments later, Aerys points out that she and Ashudo are the exact opposite and wonders if that means something. but Gelda says it's the reason why she's been keeping an eye on her. Suddenly, Lemme interrupts and asks Gelda what she did during the special campaign, since she could easily handle a dragon. In response, Gelda says she had to step back, since stepping in wouldn't help Aerys grow. After this, Lemme says that they can't leave Ashudo unchecked, and Gelda agrees with her. She then pulls out a book, surprising Lemme, who then asks what the book is. In response, Gelda says it's a book of prophecies by Briggan the Witch. Surprised, Lemme points out that Briggan is the rival Gelda has quarreled with for over a century, but Gelda says Briggan just decided she's a threat. When Lemme reveals that Gelda passed away some centuries back, Gelda tells her to check a page in the book. Lemme then flips open the book and finds a prophecy about a great demon king of terror descending from the heavens. After examining the details of the prophecy, she figures the predicted time and happenings matched that of the night Ashudo appeared. Despite this, Lemme wonders if it's true but decides it's nothing but a fairy tale. Hearing this, Aerys reminds Lemme of Ashudo's confession to being a demon lord, and when Lemme keeps playing dumb, Aerys points out that he wasn't lying. Lemme then says she has seen a lot of people over the years, but Aerys says it doesn't change the fact that Ashudo is a strange one. Suddenly, Lemme grabs Aerys and licks her cheeks, shocking Aerys, who then asks what she's doing. In response, Lemme says she's concerned that Aerys has never shown interest in any man. Aerys then confesses that although it's nothing deep, she feels drawn to Ashudo's strength and would like to become like him. When she adds that Ashudo made her heart flutter when he defeated the dragon in a single blow, Lance slams her hands into the table and reminds her of her position while warning her not to show interest in a mysterious dude. However, Latessa tells her to calm down, but Lance responds, telling her to stay out of it. However, Latessa says they should be celebrating since it's the first time Aerys is showing interest in a boy. Suddenly, Lacne berates Latessa for being unable to cook a relationship like she cooks 5-course meals. Suddenly, an argument ensues, and Lemme tells the ladies not to take the prophecy seriously and says that she's got a question to ask. When Gelda thinks she's about to show off her stupidity, Lemme says she expects great things from the Silver Wolf Knights, since they're a brilliant group of girls, and asks if they can let Ashudo join the party. Immediately, Lance fires up and says it's impossible since men are forbidden from their party. In addition, Lacance points out that Aerys might fall for Ashudo, but Aerys says she's just exaggerating. Just then, Lemme sighs and says she'll think of how to deal with his case and promises to arrange everything once his adventurer license arrives. Somewhere else, Ashudo wakes from his sleep and wonders where he is. When he remembers he's in his quarters, he figures he slept better than he thought, even though the room is in a terrible condition and is very different from his previous world. When Ashudo died, he had thought everything ended, but he figured his life was just getting started. Just then, someone knocks on the door and asks if he's awake, but Ashudo freaks out on realizing it's a girl since he's been through enough terrors with women. In the past, ladies who entered his room let their intrusive thoughts win. So Ashudo asks who it is at the door, and the girl says she's from the guild. When he opens the door, Elsie introduces herself and reveals that she'll become his attendant from that moment on. She then tells him where to find her when he needs her help. Surprised, Ashudo asks if she's a royal court lady, and the surprised Elsie says her job is to help him with anything he needs. Ashudo sighs on hearing this, and Elsie asks if something is troubling him. In response, Ashudo says that he doesn't want to be part of the guild. Elsie then reveals that he's already registered at the guild and adds that he's got a reputation at the guild since Lemme recommended him. Afterwards, Elsie says she thinks he could join the night squad, but Ashudo says he's more inclined to give orders than receive them. Impressed, Elsie asks if he'd like to be a tactician in the future, but when Ashudo says he wouldn't, Elsie says he's going to make a good adventurer. While Ashudo blushes on hearing this, Elsie tells him to put some clothes on, and he freaks out, saying she could have told him earlier. However, Elsie apologizes and says she didn't know if it was a custom where he is from. So Ashudo says it's alright since he knows she didn't have any bad intentions. Just then, he shuts his eyes and tells her to get on with it. Surprised, Elsie plays along and dresses him up. When she announces that he's ready, Ashudo commends her while Elsie responds by saying he's surprisingly sweet. Curious, Ashudo asks what she means, and Elsie reveals that although she gave him a special service, he'll have to dress up by himself from that moment on. Hearing this, Ashudo freaks out, saying it's a habit from his past life, while Elsie says it's cute to see him being shy. However, Ashudo tells her to forget everything. Later in the royal capital, Ashudo checks out his adventurer's license and figures it's the only way he could earn money without ending up posing for mug shots. However, as a demon lord, he figures he should be the law that breaks the laws of other countries. Suddenly, Rika, an adventurer, approaches him and asks if he'd like a flower. So, Ashudo takes the flower and sniffs it while commenting that it's wonderful. The excited girl then thanks him for his comment and states the price of the flower. Feeling funky, Ashudo checks his pocket like he's rocking money-printing jeans, but suddenly realizes he's broke. So he apologizes to the girl and states that he's new to the town. Suddenly, Rika gets hit by someone who tells her to get out of the road and shoves her into the ground. When her flowers scatter on the floor, the lizard man realizes it's Rika and calls her the friendly fire elf. After this, he mocks her for selling flowers and says it's good she changed careers, while Rika weeps. He then tells her never to use her black magic ever again because she's a disgrace to the adventurers. Just the lizardman's ugly brother tells him to let her be, since it's bad luck getting involved with her. However, the lizardman insists he doesn't want to see Rika's face around the guild. At this point, Ashudo interrupts them by calling them beasts while a crowd gathers. Hearing this, the younger lizardman gets pissed and asks Ashudo to repeat himself. Without hesitation, Ashudo calls them beasts again, so the lizardman gets in his face and angrily says they're not beasts. When he tells Ashudo not to treat them as mere lizards, Ashudo giggles, making the lizardman ask if something was funny. In response, Ashudo says he talks quite big for a mere lizard and casts a spell that shrinks him. On seeing this, the lizardman grabs his shrunken brother and asks Ashudo what he did. In response, Ashudo says he made a mistake, since he initially planned to turn the angry lizard into a chicken, and adds that a gender swap effect got mixed up in his spell. Just then, the older lizardman freaks out, asking how he's supposed to go on quests with his shrunken brother. Just when the gender-swapped lizardman suddenly professes his love for his brother, the other lizardman accuses Ashudo of ruining his brother's life. However, Ashudo says his brother will revert in a month, and adds that it's a status effect that can be cured with magic. So the lizardman threatens to get back at Ashudo after healing his brother, while the people wonder what just happened. Just then, Rika thanks Ashudo for standing up for her, but he tells her not to mention it and asks if she's an adventurer. Startled, Rika confirms this, so Ashudo says he was helping a colleague and tells her to keep up the hard work. Meanwhile, while Rika wonders about what kind of strange skill Ashudo used, she suddenly remembers she's got somewhere to be. A few moments later, at the branch office of the Adventurers Guild, Elsie welcomes Rika, who then presents a letter she received earlier. On checking it, Elsie freaks out when she realizes Rika was summoned for being problematic. So, she offers to lead Rika to Leme's office and wonders what the director is up to. When they arrive at the office, Leme welcomes Rika, who then stutters and asks Leme if she wants something from her. In response, Leme tells her to relax and states that she has a personal quest for her. When Leme adds that she can't refuse, Rika freaks out, wondering why, and Leme explains that she'll lose her adventurer's license if she refuses. On hearing this, Rika gets scared, so Leme tells her to be calm since the quest is more suited for her. She then reveals that a new adventurer has just been granted his license, and asks if she knows about the boy everyone is talking about. When Rika confirms that she knows him, Leme tells her Ashudo is full of mysteries even for her, and adds that he could destroy the entire world if he feels like it. While Rika trepidates on hearing this, Leme says she'd like her to be his supervisor. On hearing this, Rika freaks out and says it's absolutely impossible, so Leme tells her not to worry and claims she was kidding about his ability to destroy the world. After this, Leme asks Rika how much she's got, but she stutters and shows Leme how broke she is. Amused, Leme laughs and says that she doesn't have enough to pay attention, let alone bills, while Rika covers her face in embarrassment. Just then, Leme chips in that she embarrassed herself the previous day because she was looking for some small change in the street. Afterwards, Leme asks Rika how she feels about that, knowing she's got noble elf's blood running through her veins. She then advises Rika to look up job offers in the red light district since she's got the body. But Rika says she'd rather twerk for rockets on Bingo Live than resort to that. When she reveals that she has always dreamt of becoming an adventurer since she read about a black magician in a book she got from her mom. Lemme then asks about her mom, and Rika reveals that her mom is ill and undergoing medical treatment in her village. Since her dad rented an apartment at the milk store, Rika has to work endlessly to send her money. Untouched by her sob story, Lemme comments that Rika is stubborn and reaches into her treasure chest. Suddenly, she pulls out a gold coin while telling Rika that she has more reasons to accept the quest. On seeing this, Rika's eyes almost explode while she says that the gold coin could clear all her debts and bills. So Lemme asks if she'll accept it, and when Rika hesitates, Lemme states that there aren't many people suited for the job like her since she's got a good nature and massive melons. Embarrassed, Rika covers her melons and asks Lemme if that's what she thinks of her. When she states that her melons have nothing to do with the quest, Lemme disagrees and insists Rika is perfect for the request. At this point, Rika figures she's got no choice since she wants to continue being an adventurer, so she accepts the request. Excited, Lemme comments that she made a wise decision and tosses the gold coin at her. However, when Rika almost catches it, the coin bounces back to Lemme, who then says it's her gravity magic at work. Suddenly, Rika cries and asks Lemme if teasing her is that funny. In response, Lemme says she loves seeing her cry and tells her to get close to Ashudo. Afterwards, Lemme says that she could form a party with him and tells Rika to report back to her in 3 days. 3 days later, at Ashudo's lodge, Elsie knocks on his door, and when he opens the door, he asks what she wants. Elsie then greets him and comments that he seems to be doing well. In response, Ashudo says he's fine and asks if that's all she came to say. While Elsie says that adventurers have it rough, Ashudo figures it's a good thing he got dressed in time. Elsie then says it's not why she visited and states that it's been 3 days since Ashudo got his adventurer's license. After this, she asks Ashudo why he hasn't shown up around the guild, but Ashudo says she's making a big deal out of nothing. Ignoring this, Elsie asks why he's not going on any quests, but Ashudo says it's a long story. So she begs him to spill, and Ashudo reveals that he was once made to work hard every day without a day off. However, since no one has complained about his idle way of life, and the guild pays for his lodging and food, Ashudo figures there's no need to start working. Hearing this, Elsie shakes him and tells him to come back to his senses, since he'll become a useless person by doing that. In addition to this, Elsie says he can't keep up with the lifestyle since the guild's support has its limits. After telling him that he could get his license revoked by living off the guild, she grabs Ashudo and tells him to follow her to the guild. While she drags him along, Ashudo says that he's not ready, but Elsie says she'll be gentle. Shortly after, they arrive at the Adventurers Guild and check the quest board. After taking a quick glance, Ashudo says there's nothing they can do, since the quests are not worth doing. Elsie then states that the adventurers visit the guild in the morning to scoop up all the best quests. Hearing this, Ashudo asks if any jobs will allow them to earn a lot of money quickly, but Elsie advises him against that and reminds him that he's still a rookie. She then suggested they go through the quests for rookies first. Just then, Elsie picks a quest and says it's the proper one for him, but on checking it out, Ashudo asks if she really intends to send him off to pick mushrooms. Elsie then explains that everyone starts small and adds that thinking he's the strongest will is the fastest way to die. Since she insists, Ashudo agrees to the quest and waves at her while taking his leave. Suddenly, Elsie grabs him and asks him to wait. When Ashudo asks what she wants, Elsie tells him to look at his equipment first, but Ashudo says he'll be fine since he defeated the dragon and worms without any. While she lectures him, Rika suddenly slides down the stairs and face plants on the floor. Surprised, Elsie asks if she's okay, and Rika says she's fine. On seeing Ashudo, Rika thanks him for saving her the previous day, but Ashudo says it's nothing. Meanwhile, Elsie insinuates that Ashudo has been busy saving lonely girls from their fate, but Ashudo says it's not what she thinks. Just then, Rika introduces herself as a level 1 black mage, and in turn, Ashudo introduces himself. When Elsie gets shocked on hearing the name, Ashudo says she doesn't look so well. Meanwhile, Rika gets nervous, wondering what to do since she didn't think she'd meet him soon. Afterwards, Rika asks if she could support Ashudo on the quest he's about to take on, but Elsie trepidates, despite hearing it's a quest for newbies. When Elsie adds that her skill will be helpful in appraising the mushrooms, Ashudo tells her not to be selfish. Elsie then explains that Rika inherited elf blood and can assist him with harvesting medicinal plants, but Rika says her skill is nothing compared to that of a pure elf since she's half-elf. Sensing her reluctance, Elsie asks if she is busy because the director told her something, but Rika says it's nothing important and decides to go on the quest if Ashudo would have her. Excited, Elsie assures Ashudo that Rika is a reliable adventurer while he decides to add her to his troop. Just then, Elsie says it's a wise decision and advises Rika not to spam her magic. Rika then says she knows, while Ashudo wonders what that means. So when asked about it, Elsie says it's a secret between girls. However, Rika asks if he has a reason to exist when no one has any hopes for her magic, but Elsie quickly interrupts her by saying she's got lots of good points too. When Rika asks what she means, Elsie says she's got a cute face and a style that surprises Rika, who then says it has nothing to do with being an adventurer. While the girls go back and forth, Ashudo figures they're exact opposites. Just then, some adventurers walk into the guild, saying it's time to celebrate since they just beat up a goblin. But when they spot Rika going at it with Elsie, their high moods suddenly crashed, and they freak out while calling her the friendly fire elf. After this, one of the adventurers says Rika just ruined her mood, while another asks why the guild hasn't put up a quest to hunt Rika. Feeling bad, Rika asks if they'd take up such a request while Elsie glares in silence. While watching this, Ashudo figures he has added Rika to one of his troops and decides he's also insulted when his retainer gets bashed like that. So he suddenly lets off a surge of magical flash, which breaks some glasses nearby and scares the adventurers. Surprised, the adventurer wonders why that happened, while Ashudo asks why they're worked up when it's probably a spoiled brat from the neighborhood throwing rocks. In response, they ask Ashudo which countryside he's from since such doesn't happen in the royal capital. Surprised they don't know him, Ashudo wonders how he could roast them, while Elsie asks if anyone got hurt. Still shocked, the adventurers wonder why just one window is broken, while Elsie tells them to avoid the crystal shards on their way out. When the adventurers leave, Rika stares blankly while Elsie shuts the door and asks Ashudo if he was the one who broke the window. Ashudo then admits to it and says she doesn't need to thank him. After this, Elsie says she feels relieved, but adds that she'll only let him off once and charge him for repairs the next time he does it. When Elsie leaves the room to get it cleaned, Ashudo suggests they leave before she gets back, so Rika thanks him for taking care of her. Suddenly, Rika's belly plays a soundtrack loud enough to worry the neighbors, and she apologizes while Ashudo asks if she's hungry. When Rika reveals that she hasn't eaten in 2 days, Ashudo remembers he's yet to have his breakfast, so he suggests they go together since she can't go to war on an empty stomach. Later, while they head into the forest, Rika calls Ashudo to ask a question, and he asks if it's about what happened at the shopping district. When Rika confirms this, she recalls the moment Ashudo got them food and asks for the payment to be directed to his guild. Ashudo then explains that he has Elsie's permission to do that. As they went on in the forest, Ashudo refers to his archives and realizes they're in a forest frequented by tourists. So he points out that the forest is a letdown since the monsters around don't show themselves, making it so peaceful, while Rika freaks out on hearing this. Ashudo then tells her to quit being nervous since she's one of his troop and adds that she can relax since he won't be cruel to her. After Rika thanks him for this, Ashudo asks Rika if the forest vegetation eats humans or animals. Surprised, Rika asks what he means while Ashudo explains that it's normal for man-eating vegetation to exist in forests. He then states that she could get swallowed just by resting on a tree trunk. Hearing this, Rika asks which world his tail is from, and Ashudo reveals that it's a world he knows very well. When Rika says it must be a crazy world, Ashudo says it's where he was born, so Rika apologizes for insulting his birthplace. However, Ashudo says he doesn't care about all that, but Rika realizes he's not normal since the monsters have been avoiding them all the while. Shortly after, they arrive at a clearing where a tree stands in the middle of a lake, so when Ashudo comments that it's a beautiful place, Rika tells him they're at a famous spot for tourists. On checking the request form, Ashudo points out that they've arrived at the spot where the spirit sage mushrooms grow, and Rika adds that the tree on the island is the Einzel, the god tree. After this, Rika says she can operate a boat and suggests they cross with one, but Ashudo says the short distance doesn't need a boat. Surprised, Rika asks what he means, and Ashudo offers her his hand and says she's going with him. Before she could say Jack Robinson, Ashudo scoops her up into his arms while she freaks out at how embarrassing it feels, but Ashudo tells her to shut up to avoid biting her tongue. Suddenly, he leaps off the ground and lands on the island. When he puts Rika down and announces that they're there, she falls to the ground quivering while Ashudo wonders what's wrong with her. After this, Ashudo suggests they look for the spirit sage mushrooms and asks Rika where they grow. When she tells him, some armored bugs suddenly jump out of the lake, surprising Rika, who then wonders what they're doing around the god tree. She then wonders if the monsters avoiding Ashudo earlier hid on the island and are attacking because they have nowhere else to go. Suddenly, Rika decides they'll get eaten if she doesn't act quickly. Being a black mage, she channels the flame god named Ignika and activates a spell while Ashudo tells her to wait. However, Rika was far gone into the spell and couldn't hear him, so she attacked the beasts with her black magic, and they all got burned by fireballs, which spread widely in the area. Seeing this, Rika panics and remembers the moment Elsie advised her against spamming her magic. Just then, she looks around for Ashudo among the raging flames and screams his name. Before all this, Rika was blessed with great magical power from the moment she was born. Because she admired a black mage she discovered in a picture book, she gave all she had to become like the black mage. After school, she took her first step towards her dream, but it ended up as a disaster since she mistakenly used her fire spell on 9 of her party members during a quest. For some unknown reason, Rika's spells became wide area of effect attacks whenever she was in an actual battle. And because of this, whenever her party meets a formidable enemy, everyone gets roasted except her. Fortunately, her party members survived her spell, but even though they would have all been annihilated if she hadn't used her magic, her party members hated her for it. Since then, terrible rumors have spread about Rika. On the island, Rika apologizes while weeping and saying she can't believe she attacked a party member again. While she regrets becoming a black mage, she calls Ashudo and begs him to respond. Suddenly, Ashudo emerges from the flames looking as toasted as you'd love your steak. Shocked, Rika freaks out thinking he's a ghost and apologizes to him while explaining that she's only good for hurting her friends as a black mage. However, Ashudo tells her she's just as wrong as everyone who scorned her, surprising Rika. After this, Ashudo explains that her spell can't be called friendly fire. After he explains what friendly fire means, Ashudo tells her a story of a time when he accidentally blew his father's arm right off. Hearing this, Rika wonders if he's just trying to make her feel better, while Ashudo says that her black magic doesn't even sting. When Ashudo tells her she'd be able to wipe out an army if she keeps going at it, Rika asks why she needs to wipe out an army. So Ashudo states that she's far from her limit and states that she could become an imperial mage one day. Although she doesn't understand what he smoked, Rika says she's glad he's fine and hands him a handkerchief. Afterwards, Ashudo cleans his face, feeling grateful for it, but when he checks the handkerchief, he realizes it has become pitch black and figures if it were someone else, they'd be in heaven smelling like a barbecue. Meanwhile, Rika freaks out on discovering that the god tree also caught her fire and was burned. Surprised, Ashudo figures he's lucky since even a god tree couldn't withstand the heat. After she panics, Rika says she's glad she met Ashudo, surprising him. When she thanks him for his words of encouragement, Ashudo gets shocked and asks why she's crying. In response, Rika says she'd definitely get the death penalty for destroying the god tree and adds that she doesn't deserve any less for her crimes. When she adds that her parents could be burned alongside her, Rika apologizes for being a bad daughter, while Ashudo tells her to stop being overdramatic since she can't solve anything by crying, and suggests she think of a way out of the situation. So Rika asks him what he thinks, and Ashudo suggests she runs away without telling anyone, but Rika says it's impossible since the guild has all her info. When Ashudo suggests that she take her parents along, Rika sobs and says the best she can do for her parents is to turn herself in. In response, Ashudo says she's an idiot while Rika says he doesn't have to point it out since she's aware. While the god tree roars as it falls, Ashudo says he doesn't dislike idiots, while Rika screams his name. Suddenly, Ashudo stops the burning tree from crushing them with a hand and says it's nothing while Rika ducks. Amazed by this, Rika points out and shows Ashudo a fairy falling out of the tree. When she says it's Ainzel, the fairy living inside the god tree, Ashudo figures he can't let it escape, so he catches the fairy with his other hand while Rika says he's grabbing her too tight. After this, she asks Ashudo how he could see and touch a fairy like that despite being a human. While she lectures him on how to hold a fairy, Ashudo shuts her up and tells Ainz that he'd be in trouble if she dies on him. He then tells the fairy to return to the god tree, but Ainzel laughs and says it's impossible. When Ashudo asks why she thinks so, Ainzel explains that the tree has been reduced to ashes and adds that the world is about to end. Alarmed, Rika asks if a war is starting, and the fairy says all that's left is for her to ascend to the heavens. However, Ashudo asks what they can do to resurrect her, and Ainzel says that they'd need the mana of about 100 elves. While Rika freaks out on hearing this, Ashudo refers to his knowledge archive and realizes that 100 elves possess the mana of about 30,000 humans, so he offers to give his mana if that's what the tree needs. When Ainzel says that the mana of just one human won't be enough, Ashudo says it's a good thing he's not an ordinary human. Suddenly, he infuses his mana into the tree in a surge of flash, and Ainzel freaks out at the amount of mana supply. Seeing how dark and wild Ashudo's mana is, she realizes he's got an infinite supply. While Ashudo thinks it's interesting that he's getting drained by a fairy, Ainzel gets excited since it's her first time draining mana from someone. A few moments later, the god tree is restored, and Rika freaks out, feeling like she's in a dream. After this, Ashudo announces that the god tree has been resurrected and asks Ainzel what she thinks. In response, Ainzel says she feels refreshed and adds that she'll live for another 100,000 years, protecting the world. As a gesture of gratitude, Ainzel then creates a fruit from the tree while Rika freaks out. So Ashudo asks her what she knows about the fruit, and she explains that it's a legendary fruit that appears once in 1,000 years. Since it's a tribute from the fairy, Ashudo decides to pluck it, but he suddenly passes out and collapses as Rika catches him. Confused, she asks Ashudo if he's alright while Ainzel explains that he must have collapsed because he ran out of mana. After this, Ainzel suggests they get some rest under her leaves and bids them farewell. Rika then tells Ashudo that he's been amazing and stays with him while he rests. Later, when Ashudo awakens from his beauty nap, Rika exclaims in surprise and asks how he feels. In response, Ashudo says that he's okay, although he's not feeling his best. So Rika says he could keep resting, but Ashudo says he's famished and suggests they eat some mushrooms while they harvest the spirit sage. Just then, Rika offers to harvest them, but Ashudo suddenly grabs one nearby and says it looks tasty. However, Rika checks it out and warns him that it's poisonous. While Ashudo stares cluelessly, Rika says the mushrooms are as dangerous as they look appealing. Just then, Ashudo thanks her for saving him, but Rika says it's not a big deal and says they need to fix his clothes. Ashudo then says it's more important that they eat something first, but since the mushrooms are not an option, he plucks off the fruit and says it looks tasty. Hearing this, Rika says it's a rare item and suggests they preserve it or sell it to a shop, but Ashudo says he won't waste Ainzel's sympathy. When he states that it's just a fruit and adds that it'll rot, Rika says he's right. So Ashudo suggests they eat the food while enjoying the scenery. After Rika thinks he's talking like a noble, she tells him to eat the fruit, thinking she'll be fine with just water. Surprised, Ashudo asks what she's saying and states that he'll allow her to eat too, but Rika freaks out and says she's not worthy of the legendary fruit. Ignoring this, Ashudo says he'll cut it in half while Rika checks it out and wonders how a newbie like her could be touching it. While she bows to the fruit, Ashudo takes a snap knife and cuts the apple in half. He then hands her half while she thinks history is about to be made. Afterwards, they decide to eat the halves at the same time, and when they do, they both freak out, saying it's delicious. While Ashudo feels like he's floating, Ashudo wonders if that's what it feels like to ascend to heaven. Meanwhile, Rika gets so excited that her words get muddled up. Afterwards, Ashudo says he knows a lot has happened and asks Rika if she's quitting the adventurer's job. Without waiting for her response, Ashudo asks Rika if she'll join his troupe, but she asks him what he means by that. Ashudo asks if she'd like to join him on other quests. Suddenly, Rika tears up from the surprise, and when Ashudo asks if something is wrong, she apologizes and says it's the first time a fellow adventurer has said something to make her happy. So Ashudo says she's dramatic and adds that she has nothing to worry about since her black magic doesn't sting him. Afterwards, he offers his hand and tells her to concentrate on showing the world she's not the friendly fire elf. Excited, Rika stretches her hand to accept his offer and shakes hands with him. Somewhere in the northeastern region, in a house standing in the middle of nowhere, Darsha, a mage, says she feels an overwhelming power coming from Oreos and confirms that her mother's prophecy was right. While checking a book of prophecies, she states that there's a prophecy about the great demon king of terror and decides she needs to see for herself if it's true. Just then, a plushie asks if she's going to the royal capital, and she responds, saying that although she hates crowds, it'll be worth it. Sometime after the mushroom harvest job, Ashudo feels bored in his lodge, and since he was put to a compulsory bed rest after using up his mana on the quest. Just then, Ashudo realizes that a whole week of rest is too much, and suddenly gets an idea to explore the city and jumps out of his window. When he lands out, he tries to stay quiet since the innkeeper must not catch him. Shortly after, he checks out the view of the city and comments on how amazing it looks. He then says he'll make the castle his one day and paint it black, but his stomach interrupts his pipe dreams with a depressing tone. So Ashudo figures he hasn't had lunch, and on checking his wallet, he realizes he isn't as rich as he thought. Shortly after, Ashudo gets some food and decides he should get some equipment to avoid Elsie's nagging him. So Ashudo empties his wallet and realizes he doesn't have enough to afford new equipment. However, when he wonders if he could get equipment strong enough to withstand Rika's black magic, he decides to buy new clothes after every quest. After this, Ashudo decides to fix Rika's habit of hitting wrong targets with her magic by making her practice more in the field, since she'll be useful to him as a black mage. Suddenly, he realizes he's in a strange alley, and while he wonders where he is, he hears someone scream for him to leave. On looking up, he spots a lady jumping out of a window, and as she drops, he reaches out and catches her. The lady then thanks him and says it's a coincidence to meet him right there. Surprised, Ashudo wonders how she knows his name, and the lady asks if he really doesn't recognize her. Suddenly, Aerys adjusts her hair, and Ashudo suddenly realizes it's her. When she says she thought he'd recognize her, Ashudo says he has only seen her in adventurer attire. After this, she congratulated him on graduating from the training school on his first day. Just when she asks if he has started taking quests, they hear sounds of boots approaching. So Ashudo asks if a war is about to start, but Aerys sighs and asks what she should do. Curious, Ashudo says it's unlike her to sigh and asks what she's worried about. In response, Aerys says she's got a favor to ask, and Ashudo says he owes her for being his guardian. After this, Aerys asks him to abduct her, surprising Ashudo, while some soldiers show up behind him and ask him to get away from Aerys. When they add that he's unworthy to touch her and threaten to show him no mercy, Ashudo asks Aerys what was going on. Aerys then says that they must be bad people trying to capture her. So Ashudo reaches out and says it's annoying to obey the soldier anyway. So he grabs Aerys and says he'll abduct her. Shortly after, he scoops her into his arms and dashes off while the soldiers decide to corner him. When Aerys tells him to look up ahead, Ashudo tells her to hold on tight, and he leaps high above the soldiers, who then marvel at this and say he's not human. When he lands, the soldiers decide to go after him, but Ashudo suggests that they blend in with the crowd. But then he realizes it'll be hard with her flashy dress, so he asks if there's a clothing store nearby. In response, Aerys says she's not with her wallet, so Ashudo decides to pay for it while wondering if he has enough to pull that off. Shortly after the run into someone who recognizes Aerys and says it's so strange seeing her alone with a man, curious, Ashudo asks if she's another hostile, but Aerys says it's all right since she's just a friend. While smiling, Shirn introduces herself, and a few moments later, the ladies swap outfits while Ashudo stands nearby with his face turned away. Just then, Ashudo wonders how he ended up in that situation, while Aerys comments that Ashudo was shocked when he heard that Shirn is the heiress to the Demon Lord Castle. Amused, Cheyenne laughs and says it's the first time she's seen anyone get worked up by the tavern's name. While the ladies compare their assets and ask for advice on how to make them bigger, Ashudo cringes and asks Aerys if she isn't done yet. In response, Aerys apologizes for keeping him waiting, and when he turns to check out the ladies, he freaks out on spotting Cheyenne's outspoken orbs struggling to fit into Aerys's outfit. When Cheyenne comments that it's weird, Ashudo says it's not, while Aerys apologizes to Cheyenne and hands her a coat. After this, Cheyenne wears the coat and heaves a sigh of relief. After this, Cheyenne bids them farewell, and Ashudo asks Aerys what they'll do. Aerys then asks Ashudo if he isn't curious about her situation, and he asks if she wants him to be. When Aerys says she doesn't want him to be curious, Ashudo then says she doesn't have to tell him. Excited, Aerys thanks Ashudo, but he says there's nothing to be thankful for. Afterwards, Aerys asks if he had something to do in town before, and Ashudo says he was looking for an armor shop. So, Aerys drags him and tells him to follow her. Shortly after, when they arrive at the armor shop, Ashudo tells Aerys at the door that all he has is 2,000 rions, and she says it's all right since they could window shop. On entering the shop, Aerys greets Daman, the shop owner, who was surprised to see her. However, when he sees a man with her, he gets mind-blown. So Aerys explains that she's acting as Ashudo's guardian, and on hearing this, Daman asks if H.S. the rookie adventurer everyone is talking about. After Aerys confirms this, she explains that he wants to take a look at some equipment. So Daman asks how much he's got, and when Ashudo reveals how much he's got, he asks Daman about armors specialized in magic resistance. Hearing this, Aerys asks Ashudo why he's asking about magic resistance specifically, so Ashudo narrates how his quest with Rika went. Afterwards, Aerys says she has heard rumors about Rika and comments that Ashudo is a smooth dude for having a girl at his party already. However, Ashudo tells her to quit exaggerating, so Aerys asks if what he wants is to protect his clothes and not just his body. When Ashudo says she's right, Aerys turns him around and hugs him from behind, while Ashudo freezes and blushes. He then calls out to Aerys while Daman tells them to get a room. Just when Aerys lets him go, she points out that Ashudo's body is weird, surprising Ashudo, who then says he doesn't understand. So Aerys explains that he's tough because there's a thin layer of mana above his skin. Hearing this, Ashudo says he is unaware of that, and Aerys chips in that it might be a unique skill he has had since the moment he was born. Afterwards, Aerys suggests that Ashudo tries to make his body believe his clothes are a part of his skin, but Ashudo says he doesn't think he'd be able to do that. However, when Aerys says he won't know until he tries, Ashudo decides to give it his best. A few moments later, Ashudo decides to sense the flow of his mana and discovers that Aerys was right. He then decides to expand his layer of mana, while Aerys asks Daman if he has a suitable weapon. Daman then brings a sword and says that an adventurer forgot it. Just then, Ashudo asks Aerys to cut him, so she draws the sword and takes a slash at Ashudo. However, the sword breaks on hitting Ashudo's arm. After they all marvel at this, Daman asks Aerys who will pay for the sword, and Ashudo figures he'll have to pay, but he and Aerys coincidentally say they'll pay for the sword. Annoyed, Daman says they're just teasing him and tells them to go already since Ashudo doesn't need any armor. After they get thrown out, Ashudo asks who will pay for the sword, and Aerys says that he probably let them go because he respects Ashudo's power. So Ashudo comments that he's a good guy with a grumpy face and decides to remember him. Shortly after, Aerys suggests they look for a weapon and offers to introduce Ashudo to her dealer. When she adds that the sword she sent for sharpening should be ready too, Ashudo decides to go with her, since he's got time to kill. Afterwards, Aerys yanks him through the crowd, and as they pass by an alley, Rika spots them and wonders if she saw correctly. She then wonders why Ashudo is hanging out with Aerys, since a few moments before this, she was informed to look for Ashudo since he had disappeared from his quarters. However, since they appeared really close, Ashudo feels reluctant and wonders why someone like her is being jealous of Aerys. After she calls herself an idiot for this, she decides that all she needs to be focused on is how to be Ashudo's assistant. After she daydreams about becoming a black mage and fighting alongside Ashudo, she suddenly realizes she has to follow them. Meanwhile, at the weapons shop, Aerys leads the way in while Ashudo asks if it's her regular spot for shopping for weapons. Just when Ashudo comments that the store is fancy, Carlin, the shop attendant, welcomes them and asks Aerys why she's dressed differently. On spotting Ashudo, Carlin comments that Aerys brought a man and adds that she's jealous. However, Aerys tells her to calm down and explains that Ashudo is a newbie adventurer and she's acting as his guardian. Unimpressed, Carlin says she was hoping he was more than that. However, she points out that he is quite handsome and seems promising. Suddenly, she realizes his name sounds familiar, but asks what they want. Before getting a response, Calvin presents Aerys' sword to her and says it's ready to cut everything down. So Aerys thanks her and tells her to send the bill to her night squad. After this, Carlin points out that Ashudo must be looking for a weapon since they came together, and Ashudo reveals that he used to wield a sword. Without hesitation, Carlin whips out a broad sword made by a famous company and says it's popular among newbies and intermediate adventurers. While she advertises the sword, Ashudo tries to draw the sword out of its scabbard, but it suddenly shatters in his hands. So Ashudo comments that it's an inferior product and asks for the smith who made it, while Carlin trembles. After this, Aerys points out that it might be Ashudo's fault and asks if he unconsciously poured his mana into it. She then hands him another sword and asks him to try it out, but when he does, the sword shatters too, while Carlin freaks out and collapses in shock. She then asks Ashudo about the kind of sword he usually wields, while Aerys says it must be one strong enough to withstand his mana. Just then, Ashudo explains that his sword had a special gemstone called the Demon Lord Gemstone engraved into it. When he says it doesn't shatter no matter how much mana he pours into it, Carlin wonders if she's ever heard of such a sword. Ashudo then adds that when he applies his mana to the sword, it adds different effects to his attacks. On hearing this, Aerys says it sounds like the legendary East Scimitar from the east side of the world. Impressed, Carlin says she was thinking of the same and reveals that Ashudo must be talking about a gemstone made from the demon iron core. When Ashudo asks if they have it in the shop, Carlin says it's impossible and states that only a master blacksmith specialized in it can sell it. But since there's none in the capital, Carlin says he'll be charged a great amount if he ever finds one. Just then, Aerys says that demon iron or mining requests show up at the guild from time to time. So Ashudo says he'll accept the quest and procure the iron ore for himself. When he states that he'll then get a blacksmith, Aerys laughs, making Ashudo curious about what's funny. So Aerys says that he had adventurer written all over his face, but Ashudo freaks out and says he's only doing it to make a living. However, Carlin apologizes for interrupting their intimate talk and asks who will pay for the shattered swords. Just then, Aerys and Ashudo coincidentally respond at the same time, saying they'll pay. Annoyed, Carlin tells them to quit playing Couple of the Year and states that she'll search for the sword since her interest in other countries' weapons is unstoppable. Ashudo then thanks her, and they take their leave. Shortly after, they arrived at a crowded spot in town, and while Ashudo thinks they won't be found in the crowd, Aerys comments that a festival is being celebrated to pray to the Earth Goddess for an abundant harvest. While Ashudo wonders why everyone is eating and drinking, Aerys comments that something smells delicious. So Ashudo asks what it is, and Aerys shows him a pastry that can be eaten while walking. However, when Aerys says she has no money on her, Ashudo reaches into his pocket and says he'll treat her if she wants it so badly. He then tells her it's her way of showing his gratitude and tells her not to be shy while Aerys thanks him. Shortly after, Ashudo tastes the pastry and comments that it's tasty while Aerys thanks him for the meal, but Ashudo tells her not to thank him. Just when Aerys chips in that he sounds like her father, they hear someone say they've finally found Aerys, and Lance suddenly shows up, saying she never imagined Aerys would be disguised in peasant clothes. She then orders Aerys to stop resisting and go with her since her father is very worried. Surprised, Ashudo asks Aerys what she's talking about, and Aerys says her time is up. She then apologizes to Ashudo for deceiving him and confesses that she ran because her father ordered her to make her debut in the high nobility. Ashudo then says she should have told him earlier and asks what she wants to do instead and offers to lend her a hand. In hearing this, Aerys thanks Ashudo and says she'll solve nothing by running away and decides to tell her father what she truly wants. When she says she'll leave home if her father doesn't understand, Ashudo says he won't mind abducting her again when the time comes. So Aerys smiles and says that she'll ask him when the time comes. Meanwhile, somewhere high in the city, Dorsch watches the city and casts a spell and stretches her staff to summon a fire giant named Surtur from the sky. When Aerys bids Ashudo farewell, Ashudo stares at the darkening and rumbling sky while Lance tells Aerys to hurry. Just then, Ashudo spots a portal in the sky and flames emerging from it. So he asks what it is, but the flame giant suddenly descends on the city and destroys some houses. Unfazed, Ashudo asks what's going on while people flee and asks if it's a side show of the festival, but Lance asks if he's dumb and points out that it's an emergency. When he checks out the roaring flame giant, Ashudo figures she's right as the flame giant crashes into more houses. Watching the ongoing destruction, Aerys says the royal capital will be destroyed if they don't act quickly, but Lance tells her to think about her position and reminds her that she's unarmed. However, Aerys pulls out her sword and says she's got a weapon, but Lance tells her to wait since she doesn't have armor. Just then, Ludes joins them and asks about the monster. When Lance says she has no idea and says Gelda might know what it is, another portal suddenly opens above Ashudo, and Gelda suddenly drops out of it. After landing on Ashudo, Gelda announces her arrival while Ashudo wonders what kind of emergency made Gelda break the no teleportation rule. He then tells Gelda to get off him, but she apologizes and says it felt like the perfect place to sit. Curious, Aerys asks Gelda what the monster is, and she explains that it's Surtur, the flame giant. After explaining that it's one of the summoned beasts of the highest rank, she adds that they have to find the summoner and seize them. After this, Gelda says that the summoner must be somewhere high, enjoying the views. So Aerys responds by saying they have to defeat the Surtur, but Lance says it's out of the adventurer's sphere of action. When Aerys says that they're the only ones capable of protecting the town before they arrive, Ashudo calls the Lays and notifies them that Surtur is destroying the town while they argue. At this point, Aerys says they don't have time and adds that they have to slow down Surtur. In response, Ashudo says he admires her enthusiasm, but adds that they have to devise a good plan first. After this, he says that many people took care of him in the town and states that he won't let a mere summoned beast do as it pleases. Afterwards, Ashudo says that he has an idea that's better than nothing and asks what the ladies want to do. Some moments later, while the town burns, Ladessa rides on her wolf with a rifle and calls out to the flame giant, saying she'll be its opponent. Suddenly, she fired off some shots at the beast, but since the bullets didn't bang, Ladessa aimed for its joints and fired her shots, but since the bullets melted, Ladessa says it's weird. So Aerys wonders what to do and suddenly hops on a roof and attacks the flame giant with her sword. When she gets burned, she hops off the monster and figures any other sword would have been melted with such an attack, and wonders if the flame giant has any physical body. Just then, Ladessa comments that the flame giant is made of flames shaped in the body of a giant. She then suggests that Aerys put on armor and a helmet. Just when Aerys realizes that physical attacks won't work, Ladessa suggests they go along with Ashudo's plans and make the flame giant focus on them. After this, Aerys decides to show off the power of a white knight and activates her white knight abilities. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Lance points out that Aerys and Ladessa are late and adds that she should have gone with them, but Ashudo says it's too late and tells her to calm down. After this, he reminds her that she decided that she wouldn't be the decoy and chose to perform the interception attack instead. Suddenly, Ashudo senses that Aerys has activated her ability and tells Lacne that she won't have much time. While the flame giant follows Aerys around the city, Ashudo reveals that they'll soon be with them, and just then, the flame giant arrives at their location. When Aerys announces that she has lured the monster as he requested, Ashudo orders Gelda to do her thing, so Gelda casts a spell and seals up the flame giant within a spherical barrier. While the flame giant tries to jailbreak, Ashudo commends Gelda and says that playtime is over. However, the flame giant roars angrily from within the barrier. Suddenly, a beast salamander shows up out of nowhere, and someone points out that it's a summoned beast, surprising Lance, who then says she has never heard of a summoned beast summoning other beasts. So Aerys says she'll take care of the small fry and dishes towards it to attack. However, after she slashes the beast salamander into several pieces, it suddenly explodes to Ashudo's surprise. He then points out that the beasts explode when they are on the verge of death. Meanwhile, Aerys pulls a backflip and escapes the explosion. When she says she's fine, Ashudo says he didn't expect any less and attacks the other summoned beasts. Just then, he realizes the beasts multiply the more they destroy them and try to break Surtur out if they're left unattacked. Suddenly, the flame giant tries to attack Ashudo, who then spots a civilian nearby and figures they'll be hurt if he dodges the attack. Because of this, the flame giant lands its hit, but the civilian wasn't hit. Ashudo stops the flame giant's sword with his hand and comments that the flames are hotter than those of the dragon. Surprised, the Aldies freak out on seeing Ashudo stop the flame giant's sword with his bare hands while claiming it's so dull. While they wonder if he's human, Ashudo gets excited that his clothes aren't burned from the attack, while Rika watches in amazement. At this point, Ashudo taunts the flame giant, telling it that he caught its weapon and poured his mana into it. Suddenly, the giant's sword cracks and shatters, making Rika freak out. Surprised to see her, Ashudo asks what she's doing and shakes his hands while asking Rika to lend him her powers. While the flame giant tries to regain its balance from Ashudo's mana attack, Aerys marvels at how Ashudo stopped the gigantic sword and shattered it like he did at the weapons shop. While she smiles, fascinated by this, Ashudo tells Rika again to lend him her power and asks how long she intends to stay on the ground. Just then, Rika snaps out of it and apologizes for being a coward. In response, Ashudo says she's being annoying, but she shrieks and tells him to stop. Surprised, Ashudo asks if she's hurt while a fireball approaches them. So Rika shrieks again, and Ashudo realizes the flame giant must have been pissed when he broke his sword. He then grabs Rika and scoops her into his arms while the fireball explodes near them. Seeing this, Ashudo figures Gelda must be giving her all to keep the flame giant restricted and asks Rika if something's wrong with her. When he asks if she wet herself from being so scared, Rika denies this and says she wants to die from the embarrassment. However, Ashudo says that it doesn't matter and asks her to lend him her powers, surprising Rika. He then explains that they're fighting a flame giant and states that water must be its weakness. So he asks Rika if she could use water black magic. In response, Rika says she just learned how to use the freezing spell Blizzard and adds that she doubts it'll work against a giant. However, Ashudo tells her not to fret since she's talented and reminds her of all she did with her fire spells. After this, he tells her not to worry about the friendly fire and adds that the other ladies can easily handle themselves. So he tells Rika to recite the spell while he protects her from the incoming fireballs. Just then, Rika decides to give it a try and recites the spell while wondering why she feels safe amidst all the dangers around them. When she begins the spell, Ashudo announces that they're up to something crazy and tells the ladies to deal with it however they want. Confused, Lance asks what Ashudo means by that, and Aerys says she's looking forward to it, even though she didn't get it either. When Rika finishes her spell, a portal suddenly opens and a blizzard blows out of it. On seeing this, Laetessa freaks out, wondering where it's coming from, while Lance says that it's not a blizzard. However, Aerys comments that it's a first-class ice magic and asks if it's diamond dust, while the flame giant freezes over. When Aerys adds that the spell could compete with Gelda's black magic, Gelda goes mute while thinking that only a few people could use such a vast range of black magic. While Ashudo feels proud of his comrade, since she's just a level 1 black mage with talent, he hops off a roof while still holding Rika in his arms and states that he can't believe she froze over the salamander army and the flame giant. When he finally puts her down, Ashudo tells her that the monsters are nothing more than big targets. Seeing them talk, Lance comments that it's an eyesore, and when Aerys shows up, Ashudo tells her to take care of Rika while he finishes off the monster and its army. However, Aerys warns him that it's dangerous to attack it recklessly and suggests they find its weakness first. Laetessa then confirms this and reveals that the flame giant's body is made up of flames. When she chips and that lame attacks won't work, Ashudo figures she's right and decides to take that into account, since he was initially thinking of attacking with his fists. But when he figures that won't work, the flame giant suddenly breaks out of the ice and emits several flashes of light, surprising Ashudo, who then wonders if it's the salamanders. Just then, an explosion goes off, and the barrier breaks while Ashudo collapses, feeling himself passing out. Just then, the attack reminds him of the moment when he got defeated as a demon lord. He had taunted the heroes, but they cast a spell that unleashed the strongest being in the world and made him tremble with fear at the sight of the being. Despite this, Ashudo accuses them of cheating and decides to fight the being despite knowing that he was screwed. Shortly after, he felt so cold and empty and realized it's the way death feels. He had been shown how inferior he was, even though he fought using every resort he had and drifted to another world after using his true Mokard, his ultimate form. At that moment when he transformed into his ultimate form, Ashudo's brain had cut off his memories to protect him. Contrary to what he thought, he wasn't reborn as a human. He was transformed into his ultimate form. Suddenly, Ashudo snaps out of his memory recovery mode and realizes that he wasn't reincarnated in another world, but was only transferred. Gelda then comments that he's awake and says that their best option would be to remove the barrier and withdraw for the time being. Suddenly, Ashudo's brain gets a ping, and he asks how everyone is and suggests they treat them all quickly. Surprised to see everyone unconscious, Ashudo figures Gelda must have shielded and protected everyone from the attack, which knocked him out. Gelda then says she's still got enough magic to transport everyone, but Ashudo tells her there's no need to use telepathy. Surprised, Gelda asks if he could use telepathy, and Ashudo says he got his old memories back and remembers how to communicate using magic. After this, he says he'll deal with the monsters somehow and tells Gelda to muster her strength and concentrate on keeping the barrier up. While Gelda marvels at his confidence, some beast salamanders approach Ashudo, and he asks if they're happy to be free again. He then tells them to get lost and makes them explode. Seeing this, Gelda wonders how he took out so many salamanders at once. Just then, Ashudo calls out to the flame giant and says it's a haughty one. Afterwards, he decides to show the giant how he fights when he gets serious. While the flame giant roars, Ashudo charges towards it and figures he's been limiting himself all along, thinking he reincarnated as a human. While he thinks it's funny, Aerys awakens and spots Ashudo flying to attack the flame giant. Meanwhile, Ashudo clenches his fist and asks the flame giant if it's ready. Suddenly, Ashudo lands his catastrophic punch on the flame giant and makes it stagger. Seeing this, Aerys figures the core must be the flame giant's weak spot and calls out to Ashudo to inform him. However, Ashudo says it's a coincidence that he was thinking the same thing. Just then, he strikes the core and shatters the rock powering the flame giant. As a result, the flame giant crumbles while the ladies watch in amazement. When Ashudo lands on the ground, he says that the flame giant was rude. If you made it to the end of this video, comment "Demons are mid-humans." Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to the channel for similar content. Thanks for watching.